Hey there, guys, and welcome to Behind the Crypto Podcast. I'm Mike Graham, and I'm your guide and host as we have some amazing conversations with founders, builders in the Web3 space, making waves and bringing changes. Today, we have Julia, CEO and founder from Tings. Julia, it's great to have you with us.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for the invite.
No, my pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. It's so exciting. I'm so excited to hear what you guys are building. We've obviously been working in the background, cooking, and you guys are so many exciting deals, opportunities coming out of Tings. But before we dive into all of that, tell us a little bit about Julia. Tell us a little bit about you so the audience gets to know you. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been actually all my life in marketing and advertising. So previously, before joining Web3, I was working a couple of years. You can probably hear it from my German accent. From Germany, I was working for Adidas, the German sports brand, at the headquarters for a couple of years. And then I moved actually to Google, where I was working for 5 years with some of the biggest advertisers in the world, helping them, with the digital transformation and to activate the audiences to grow their communities. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And then I decided I want to really go into Web3, and I joined as head of marketing a Web3 validator on Solana. And that's all, before I created Tings. And it all comes together nicely because, like my whole life, I was like helping brands to activate audiences. And that's exactly what we are continuing now with Tings, which is because Tings, we are creating a platform which creates a new form of user engagement using games as a medium.
I love that. I love that. It's so interesting listening to kind of how you got into Web3 and your first role. What was the thing? What was the spark that made you go from Google into Web3, or how did you get into the Web3 space?
Yeah. I mean, it was a wonderful experience working for Google. And as you can imagine, I learned a lot in this 5 years. And really, it's like the fantastic thing about Google is, you're like never the smartest person in the room.
True.
Like everybody's so smart, and you can learn so much. So that was beautiful. But I was already since 2017 privately spending all my time in in Web3, like investing and so on. And I think the thing that draw me most into Web3 is just the core values. I think a lot of people joined Web3 because of that. I'm a fan of the underdog. I have a soft spot for that. So I think I really love this idea, of decentralization, of ownership, of shifting the power to the people, of, really making finances accessible to everyone in the world, and then
Yeah.
having like no intermediaries. So that was the core reason why I joined the space. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. That's very powerful, isn't it? And I think that the Web3 has the power to, like you said, enable people to kind of set their own rules, but live within the means that they want to live and that kind of thing. Let's talk a little bit about Tings, because you started tapping into that with what you were doing at Google and your previous history, working on the marketing, working on the engagement, working on the user kind of journey, etc. Tell us a little bit about Tings, like kind of what are we building there? How did you start with that project? What's Tings all about?
Yeah. So what I saw is that, while I was working at Google, like a lot of my clients had this issue, with ads getting more and more expensive. Then, of course, with the ad scrolling, people, they get blind for the ads. So you basically, have to have more and more ads to have the same effectiveness that you had maybe like 5 years ago. So what I was looking at is like, what is like this whole interactive content, like, for example, that gaming has. And I'm like, why are not all of these big brands that I worked with previously in gaming, why are they not spending money on gaming? So I went and interviewed them, and I said, so tell me, like, why you're not tapping in this huge audience of gamers? Because I don't know if you knew that, because Gen Z actually spends more time gaming. They spend 4 hours a day gaming compared to 2.8 hours on TikTok and 2.4 on Instagram.
Wow. Say
Yeah.
that again. Gen Z spends how long?
4 hours a day
Uh-huh.
gaming
Yeah.
versus 2.8 hours on TikTok and 2.4
Wow.
on Instagram. So,
Wow.
normally this brands goes where the attention goes, no? Like they
Hmm.
have the budgets, they have the channels. So I asked them and all of them said, Julia, it's just like such a black box for us. No, game development, it takes months and months of time. Also,
Hmm.
the whole project setup, we need one person, like a whole head count to work on this gaming projects. There's no scalability, like we just don't have the resources and the knowledge for it. So that was
Mm.
kind of something that stayed with me. That was the kind of real problem. And I had this idea already where I was like, what if we would use AI to like scale it, to streamline it, to, make it faster and cheaper and so on. But
Mm.
the
Hmm.
problem was the idea came before the technology. So only at the beginning of this year, actually, my co-founder Andreas, he called me and he's like, Julia, I found the technology. I know how we can do it. So
Wow.
yeah, so we started building Tings, which is an AI gaming platform. So the whole idea is you type in a prompt and you can create a whole game out of it.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
imagine, yeah, it's like a mid-journey of gaming. And a lot of gamers also want to create their own games. Like a lot of gamers have this dream, like how to improve their childhood games. They, this
Hmm.
nostalgia.
Yeah.
They want to share it with their friends. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting, gaming, like you were talking about in terms of the engagement, the retention, the big brands not understanding that it's like a black box for them, right? We were
Yeah.
just talking before we got onto this podcast in terms of how Netflix, just timely, Netflix has just now started to do, Netflix games, right? Because they're
Yeah.
trying to have that engagement, that retention, etc. What do you think it is about games and that retention strategy or that engagement strategy that captures the users so much? What is it?
Yeah. I just think it's the difference between like passive consumption and active user. No, it's so interactive. You go into a game, you're completely consumed by it. There is no attention that you're spending anywhere else when you're gaming. No, it's not like imagine you're on the subway in the morning on your way to work and you're scrolling through Instagram. No, one eye is like looking around, one eye is on the ad, maybe you're listening to a podcast. When you're gaming, you're completely immersed and you're having fun while doing it. Also, a
Mm.
lot of games have a little bit of competitiveness. Now you can always improve yourself, like win against yourself, win against your friends. So I think that's the beauty of it. So we say it's 90% higher engagement than normal static ads.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's so fascinating listening to you talk about the game and how it has better engagement and some of the stats, because I remember, what is it, maybe 18 months or a year ago, when, we had the first game on Ton, right? Hamster, right? And just
Oh yeah.
the engagement on that was crazy because I remember one of the stats being that the average person would spend something like 90 minutes a day going on to Hamster in the beginning, right? And it was like one of
That's
the
crazy.
quickest apps to get, like third or fourth in history to get to, a crazy amount of downloads and users. Games really have that ability, I think, to capture tap into a lot of the human emotions, right? Like the
Mhm.
fun, competitiveness, the community, etc. Listen, so in terms of Tings, we're building. I know there's so many exciting things working under the bonnet in the background. What is the vision for you with Tings? Like, where are you seeing the project go? Where do you see it go as a business? Like, what are some of the goals and with Tings, and maybe for you, Julia, personally within the Web3 space?
Yeah. So I think at the core of everything we want to do, we want to make gaming fun, open, and accessible to everyone. So I think if the
Mhm.
games that we create, if they're not fun, this platform will die pretty fast. And that's what
Yes.
we are seeing with a lot of the no code or vibe coding gaming solutions out there. They're not there yet, the game mechanics and so on. So that's our biggest problem to solve.
Yeah.
In terms of vision, we want to be the mid journey of gaming. So we want people to unleash their creativity, go onto our platform, create these games, create assets. Also, there will be a lot of 3D asset generation, which is, of course, a key
Right.
for gaming. Like, imagine you create this like really cool wizard character that you can then put up onto your place. And what is also really important is that it's not only fun, but people will be also through Web3 able to monetize it. So it will be very accessible to everyone. Like imagine like you're in there, you have no coding experience, and then you build this really cool game which you can monetize and yeah, get royalties for it, revenue share. I think it's really fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I think, what's interesting, it's like, we were talking about the brands like Google where you were before, we mentioned Netflix. We're obviously talking a lot about Web3, right? But I think what's so exciting about what you guys are building specifically is that there's an opportunity within Web3, but there's also a
Yeah.
massive opportunity within Web2 as well, right? And how do you see that as a journey for Tings in terms of bringing in the brands, having that gaming, maybe working with Web3 brands, right? Like, how do you see that path for Tings?
Yeah. I think what is really important for us, we are saying we are more Web 2.5. But to be honest, I think it's just the future of Web3. If we just stay in Web3, like we will never grow and get like this new user onboarded. So I hope that Tings will be a vehicle to onboard millions of new users into Web3. So what is really important for us is like the seamless onboarding. So we are working really a lot on this seamless UI, UX experience. There will be a wallet created in the background. The user doesn't even need to know that there is a wallet. A
Yeah.
little bit like if you remember Nike did that. They did this Nike Land platform. You were just signing up with your email. There was a wallet created in the background. You didn't even know about it. No, it's completely no-brainer. And then if they want to, use Web3 token, they can use it. And, there will be, of course, benefits for it. But for people who are from Web2, they can just use fiat and they will see like credits and points and rewards. So we won't be using the typical Web3 terminology. And I think that's also super important for brands. A lot of them got scared in the last cycles around Web3. So now that's a good opportunity to really get them back into Web3, onboard them again, and yeah, convince them of the value, but in a very like soft and easy to understand way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And I think what's nice about gaming, right, is that it's a narrative that, let's say, Web 2.5, everybody understands, right? Like we said, Netflix now have launched their own gaming studio, gaming platform. I think more and more brands will see the value of that, right? So let's talk a little bit about this. When we look at Web3, obviously you guys are in that gaming AI narrative. What are some of and if it is AI gaming, beautiful. But what is a narrative that you are seeing in the space that you're quite bullish about? If it's AI and gaming, great. Maybe share a little bit more about why. If it's something else that you're excited about, great. Let's talk about that. But what is a narrative that you're seeing, let's say the next 6 months, 12 months within Web3 that you're like, you know what? That's something I'm very, very excited about.
Yeah. So of course, I'm spending most of my time at the forefront of AI and Web3. So that's exactly the narrative I'm most bullish about. Like, how can we really position Web3 as the game changer for AI, like solving a lot of the problems we have with AI with Web3? Because, now AI is going through all the businesses in this world. So I think, yeah, it's a match made in heaven because yeah, through AI, we can validate a lot. Through Web3, we can validate a lot of the AI concerns. We can verify data and so on. There's a lot of things happening. Also, AI agents in Web3. There is such a big market for that. I mean, all the conferences you've been there as well in the last 6 months, it was all about AI agents and Web3 and how much they're improving being on the blockchain just compared to like Web2.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how fast the AI space is moving, right? And I think with Tings, what is so exciting is with the whole gaming, that gaming is a big narrative, right? And with AI moving so fast, how will AI, shape that part of the industry,
Yeah.
right? Because it will have a huge kind of, way in shaping that kind of journey, but it will be very fascinating to see how it will do it. And I think, like you said, with the whole immersive experience of gaming, it's such a powerful way for brands, Web3 projects to just retain their community, retain their users, right? Listen, let's flip it a little bit, right? Let's talk. Yeah, I know. So you mentioned you came into the space originally as like an investor. You were probably, I imagined you probably bought some Bitcoin way back in the day, etc.
Of course, yeah.
What is your favorite, what is one of your favorite projects, tokens that you see in the space? I always like to ask people that come on the podcasters because it's always very interesting. So what it could be the OG, it could be Bitcoin, but maybe you've got something a little bit secret as well. What is a token that you are like, you know what? I like this one. I'm excited about that one.
When it comes to OGs, of course, Bitcoin is the number one token for me. But then also, I'm very much anchored in the Solana ecosystem since I joined the space in 2022. So I've been through the up and downs of Solana, and I still believe that they have this huge community, and I really, really support them and feel very immersed in that community. But I think in general, I think all tokens which have a utility, that's the most important thing. I think Web3 is maturing so much over the last couple of years. So we need to get away from this like quick token launches and look at the utilities and long-term value. And this will like convince the rest of the world to join us and and create long-term value.
Yeah, it's so true, right? It's so true. I think Web3 is such an important point that you made there, Julia. Web3 is really going through this shift and probably very fast, right? To the point where other people are maybe leaving this, other founders. I know with Tings it isn't the situation, but where other founders aren't thinking about it, right? In 2021, the game plan for Web3 projects was get a token, get a community, pump the price of that token. And maybe that was the revenue model, right? That was it, right? But now in 2025, you actually need to think about how do you bring in revenue? What are your different revenue? Like a business, you need to think about your project as a business, right? One thing I wanted to ask you, actually, you've obviously, and we'll start bringing the conversation towards the end, but you've shared some amazing alpha, some great insights. What do you feel, how do you feel your experience from like Microsoft and Google, right? Huge brands, right? And then coming into the Web3 space, how do you feel that that's maybe helped you with your journey in terms of being a founder, right? Because some founders in Web3, they're like, very tech, they come in with the tech side, maybe they're immersed into Web3, and they've had a lot of exposure in Web3, right? And they're just, let's say, Web3 guys, right? Whereas you, what I think is beautiful and very unique, you've had the experience of these huge brands, right? And you didn't necessarily start Tings with I'm building something for Web3, right? You kind of started something with, oh, I like Web3. It's a beautiful concept. I love I love the values that we have within here. But what you're building is actually good for everybody. Web2, Web3, Web 2.5. So yeah, how do you feel that, being ex-Google, being ex-Microsoft has kind of guided you on this journey?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. So I think, I'm not the most typical Web3 founder, but I'm really embracing it because I think what I bring to the space is just a little bit of a different perspective. So going back to the big problem of onboarding the next billion users, I think, my perspective coming from Web2 and is super helpful. I think, in terms of marketing, in terms of UX, UI, I have this bird's eye view of the problems which we are trying to solve. Because if we sometimes need 5 minutes to do a transaction, then of course my auntie Edda will never join the space. So I think, we really need to think about how do we not only improve the ecosystem, but how do we get out of it and bring new capital in? And that's one of my biggest visions for Web3 and how I can contribute to it. So I think that's my strength that I can bring into the space. Yeah.
It's wonderful, isn't it? It's wonderful because like one thing you mentioned, the brands kind of have the users, right? Like the Googles, the Microsofts, etc. I know under the bonnet some of the brands that Tings are potentially working with, and it's very exciting. And they have the users, right? And they're kind of thinking, how do we get into Web3? How do we find the value of Web3, right? And Web3 founders and builders, if they have a little bit of a mentality, a little bit like you, for example, where it's like, oh, this is the problem the big brands have. How do we use the Web3 tech to kind of, find the solution to that problem? And kind of that answers that magic question the magic word that you mentioned earlier, which is the utility, right?
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing. Listen, it's been wonderful, Julia. You shared some amazing insights in terms of Tings, in terms of what you guys are building, in terms of your journey. I always ask the guests towards the end to either share with us a, piece of advice for founders in terms of building and in terms of their project, or maybe their favorite quote, right? It's totally up to you. It could be a piece of advice. It could be your favorite quote, whatever you would prefer. But yeah, please share.
Yeah. I think one thing in the space at the moment, which is really, really interesting and which I can recommend to all founders, is like how the Web3 space at the moment is changing. I think like 3 years ago, everybody could go out with an amazing idea, PowerPoint presentation, and just start building and get all the VC money. This doesn't work like that anymore. Not only in Web3, but also in Web2. By the way, like the whole VC system there is also really struggling, and a lot of the projects they invested in were overvalued, so it didn't work out. But I think as a founder, you should just really think about like how you can prove your concept very early on. So I think what we did early on, we went into the market, we did all the interviews, and what we actually now started to do before raising money, we started to generate revenue, which is kind of unusual in Web3. Very unusual. But it just proves the concept, it's a strong market signal. There is demand. The technology is not ready yet, but of course you can already start selling early pilots, early proof of concepts for that. And I think that's the way to go, because a lot of people waste capital and time building 2 years, like the perfect product, which, once they release it, they already wasted 2 million. 2 years of their time, and then there is no product market fit. And so that's a mistake I will tell everybody not to do. Like, go out early, test your product, start to generate some kind of revenue, see what the feedback is, break your product, and then invest the money into building out the technology. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, right? And I'm really, really glad you touched on that, Julia. The whole concept that Tings is, flipping the game, right? Flipping the whole game in terms of Web3, right? In terms of, we're generating revenue before we're going to, no, not before, but as we're trying to connect with VCs, as we're trying to connect to investors. And for the VCs and investors, it just shows so much, like you said, proof of concept, proof of work, proof of revenue, right? And I think that's such a valuable piece of advice. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So listen, it's been wonderful having you with us, Julia. It's been wonderful learning about Tings. It's been wonderful sharing the alpha and kind of seeing your journey, right? From Web2, huge Web2 brands into Web3, and definitely want to watch in the next year or 2 or 3, how we conquer the whole I was going to say Web3 space, but Web 2.5 space, right? So that's very, very exciting. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your energy. Guys, this has been Julia, CEO and founder of Tings. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you on the next show. Cheers. Bye for now.
Thank you, Mike.